girl. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mike for allowing me the opportunity to give this a try, and I hope you'll be blessed by this experience this morning. And I want to say thank you to you as well for being a gracious audience. Sasha and I have been together for about a little over 3 years now. I moved to Columbus in September of 2012, fresh out of the Army. And I was wanting a dog by October of 2012, and I found Sasha in November of 2012. When I first saw Sasha, it was at PetSmart here in town, and she was in a lower level cage, kind of almost back in the corner. And chaos just erupting around her, with the dogs barking and metal cages clanging together. And she was just lying quietly there, and my first thought upon seeing her was that she was either deaf or seriously depressed, because she was not participating in the chaos that was happening around her. My second thought upon watching her a little longer was of Jesus and the disciples in a boat during the storm. And the disciples were going crazy, and Jesus was taking a nap. And I had this sense that God must want the two of us to be together. So I came home with her that day. Now, I know some of you may be a bit put off by having a dog in your church, as if it may seem somehow sacrilegious. But if you look at Job chapter 12, verses 7 through 10, we're told that if we want to know who God is, we are to go and ask the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea. And then they will tell us that their lives are in the hands of their Creator. And I have seen this proven true in Sasha's life on more than one occasion. Shortly after I got Sasha, as some of you know, I am National Guard, Alabama National Guard, and I had to go on my once-a-month drill duty. And so some very good friends of mine offered to keep Sasha for me for the weekend while I was away. They have a backyard full of trees, and these trees are full of squirrels, and any dog in their right mind would have just loved being there. So I thought that was a great offer for Sasha, so I packed up her toys and her food and water bowl, and I took her to my friend's house for her to spend the weekend. So, I dropped her off, and I headed to Alabama, and I called the next day to see how things were going. And I found out that my friends were quite upset. They had been out doing some yard work, and they had left the gate open, and Sasha had gotten away from them. And she was not interested in them putting their hands on her to get her back into their yard. And they had been chasing her for several hours, trying to get her back into their yard. And they were just very concerned that I was not going to have a dog when I got back home. And that was going to be, they felt responsible for that. So I told them to just stop chasing her and to just go back in the house. They had other things they needed to do that day, and to just get ready to go do those things. And so they agreed that they would do that. And I hung up the phone, and I began to pray that God, who is her Creator and her ultimate master, would put it into her mind and heart that she needed to go back to their yard, and she needed to get in the fence and let them close the gates. About half an hour later, they called me to say that she was indeed back in their yard, and that they had gotten the fences closed, the gates closed behind her. The next morning was Sunday morning, and they had gotten up to get ready to go to church, and they had noticed that Sasha was gone again, that she had somehow managed to squeeze through a gate that didn't really close well, and she had managed to get out of their yard, and she was gone, and they had no idea where she was. And so they went to church, and after church, they decided they would just go by my house and check on things at my house. And when they turned into my driveway, there was Sasha laying at the end of the driveway, home where she belonged. So, from those two experiences, I began to see that God is trying to show us in the natural what He does in the spiritual. And so, there are two verses that kind of drive what I'm doing with this little project right here. The first verse is in John 14:15, where Jesus tells us that if you love me, you will obey my commands. And then in Matthew 23:37, Jesus tells us that the most important commandment of all is that we love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. So I began, so really having and training Sasha has brought out in my life looking at my own ability to love God and my own willingness to be obedient to what He is asking me to do in just the normal, everyday, living life, trying to be a Christian. The first command I teach a dog is to come. Matthew 11:28 through 30. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. My yoke is easy and my burden is light." So when we teach a dog to come, usually I use a training collar. You have to have some proper tools. And one tool is a training collar that we use. And the other is a leash. And all you do is you just apply a little pressure on that collar and say the word "come." And she will turn, and she will come when she is called. So shortly after getting Sasha, you can come back up here. Shortly after getting Sasha, we went to the family farm. I wanted to give her a chance. She had been in a shelter for 3 months, so I wanted to give her a chance to really stretch her legs. But I also wanted to see how committed she was to me. You know, we had been together for about 3 or 4 days, and I had spent those 3 or 4 days as her master, demonstrating that I loved her, that I was going to be kind to her, and that she was going to be in a good place with me. But I wanted to see if she would respond to that on her own. So we went to the farm. I don't know, this is several 100-acre farm, and so when we got there, we got out of the car, and we were just walking the dirt road that runs through the property. And I took off the leash, and we continued walking until we got to sort of a big wide open field. And she saw something, and she took off. I mean, full speed across that field. I've never seen such speed. But she ran all the way across that field to the woodline. And when she got to the woodline, she turned around and looked back. And for a moment, I thought, well, this is it. This is how she says goodbye. But I also thought, this is it. This is my moment to test her. So I shouted across that field as loudly as I could for her to come. And I threw my arm back over my shoulder for her to know to move to me. And I watched her whip herself around. And I watched her come back across that field, full tilt, toward me. And that was just sheer joy for me to experience that. And I thought about the joy that God must feel when we come full tilt to Him. As I said, come is the first command I require of a dog. Her ability to come to me allows me to be her master. She had to come that day. She'd been gone. Even more important, though, she needs to come to me because I am the one with the power to change her life. I am the one who took her out of that cage at PetSmart. I am the one who snaps the leash on and off as she needs it. You and I need to come to Christ because He is the one with the power to change our lives. I don't know if you're hemmed up in a cage or tangled up on a leash, but I do know He is the one with the power to let you out of the cage. And He is the one with the power to untangle your leash. The next command that I teach a dog is to sit. We are told in Psalm 46:10 to be still and know who God is, that He will be honored by every nation, and He'll be honored throughout the world. Her ability to sit is her ability to show respect. It also has a greater ability, because if she cannot sit for me, she cannot learn. Every other command I have to teach her after the command of sit has an element of sit to it. But her ability to sit is her ability to recognize that there is someone in the room who is bigger, smarter than her, knows more than she does. You think about every learning environment you've ever been in. When you went to school, there were desks, right? You sat in the desks. You come to church, there are pews. You sit in the pews. Sitting and learning go hand in hand. Respect and learning go hand in hand. Now, when we teach a dog to sit, let me show you a little bit about that. Sasha, can you come? Come up here? Let's come up here where people can see that. Sasha didn't quite learn to sit the way I normally teach dogs to sit. She, usually when I teach a dog to sit, don't stand up please, I know, you hear me saying it. I will put some pressure on a hip joint right here, and that kind of, but when I did that, she sits that way now. But when I did that for the first time, she stiffened her whole body. And we were at Lake Bottom, across from Columbus High. We were in that fenced-in area in the track. So rather than get into a power struggle with her, I had to change tactics. A good trainer is always going to have more than one way to accomplish a task. And I didn't want to force her, because if I forced her, the accomplishment is mine. But if I let her figure it out for herself, the accomplishment is hers, and the learning is deeper. So when I put my hands on her to put pressure on the hip joint and she stiffened, I changed tactics, and I just began to step into her space. And she did what anybody does when you step into their space. They step back to create more space. And we did this about halfway across that field until she backed herself into a fence. And I knew she was going to back herself into a fence, and I let her back herself into that fence. Because then her struggle was with the fence, not with me. But she also ran out of room, and she couldn't go anywhere else, which meant in order to create a little bit of space for herself, she had to sit. And she sat under her own pressure, and not under my pressure. And that was just a great moment for her. You should have seen the look on her face. It was like, this is what you wanted? And so I backed off of the fence and gave her a little more space, and we said, sit. I said, sit again, and she sat again, this time without backing up. So again, that ability to sit, and for me in that lesson, the ability to not impose my will too harshly, is what got us through that one. And you see, I am not training her just so that I can boss her around, manipulate her, or control her. I am teaching her obedience so that she can be free. She's going to be a jerk around right now. She's not in a cage because she can't behave herself. And that's what Jesus Christ wants for you and I, to be obedient so that you and I can be free to reflect His glory, be a better version of ourselves. The next command we teach after sit is down, which she's already in that position. I'm just going to get some of her toys out here in just a minute. 2 Kings 17:36 tells us that the Lord who brought you out of Egypt with a mighty power and an outstretched arm, it is Him you must worship. To him you must bow down and offer your sacrifices. So after Sasha learned to sit, I could teach her to go into the down position. And the way we do this is just, come here. Come. Good girl. We get a toy or something she's interested in, and of course we always start in the sit position, and she's got this down that I just about don't have to, think about how well trained you'll get your children to be one day. You won't have to tell them what to do, they'll just know to do it. Don't we all dream of that? And so what I do is I take just a little toy or something she's interested in, and we just go to the ground, and she follows, and as she comes down, pull it out in front of her, and look there, we have very kindly and gently had her lay down under her own pressure. Nobody forced her, she just did it. And so, again, the down position is good because in this position, if she's overly excited and kind of bouncing around, I can put her in this position and she can calm herself down. She can also just be relaxed and be comfortable in this position. Down is also a position, again, we said earlier about showing respect. Most of us don't like a dog that jumps upon us. And dogs will typically do that to be disrespectful and to try to gain dominance. But dogs, just like people, in their packs, they have a leader, an alpha male or an alpha female. They have somebody that they look up to, that they admire, that they respect. You think about us. We need somebody who is bigger than us, that we look up to, that we admire, that we respect, that we worship. It's the only way, I'm thinking about that old hymn that we used to sing, Trust and Obey. No other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And to understand that there is somebody out there bigger than we are who has our best interest in his heart and is trying to get us to be who he needs us to be. The last command that we'll look at is the command to stay. Stay is a command about trust. Now that Sasha has learned to sit and to be down, she can now learn to stay because that keeps me from having to repeat sit, 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 or down, down, down. I can just say stay, and that's what she'll do. And this is done, again, by putting her in the sit position. Sit, please. Come on, sit. Up. Come on. Up here. Good girl. Thank you. And the way we teach a dog to sit or to stay is either in the sit position or in the down. Heel, please. Run up here. Good girl. Sit. And, all right, we'll do it from the down position. And what you're going to do is just put your hand on their head and walk a circle around them. And you want to be careful to not step on their tail, of course. But you practice that over and over, 2 or 3 times, and they get the message, and you associate it with the word stay. And they get the message that they are to hold that position. And we're going to test her here in just a minute. Because after you learn to stay, you can then do what we call add the 3 Ds of duration, distance, and distraction. Now she's got duration down pretty well. She can stay for a significant length of time. She's been in this position for most of my talk, and I've been up here for about 10-15 minutes. But we have some turkey in this bowl. So we're going to add a distraction here. And I'm going to give her a little, I'm going to let her see what that is. And if you notice, I'm gonna turn my back for just a moment. And she's most likely gonna stay right where she is. See, she has to love me more than she loves the turkey. Would you rather have your feet bare if I asked you to stay? How about your holy cow? Do y'all have a holy cow in your life that is your favorite toy, and you don't want to give that holy cow up? What if God says, I don't want you to have that holy cow anymore? I want you to give it to me, or I want you to just put it away. Will you love me enough to stay? I want to leave you with two thoughts as we close. We've talked a little bit about love and respect and obedience. A dog that rebels is a dog that is in a cage, on a leash, or perhaps dead in the street. But a dog that has been inspired by love, to honor and obey, is a dog that has been set free to be a joy to himself, to his master, and to those around him. Thank you for letting me share this morning.